Hi everyone, welcome back to another book video by me, Spooky Zoe. We have finished out June 2026, and honestly, a whirlwind of a month. Let's get into it and talk about it, because it was a wild month. You'll see when we talk about it, but without further ado, let's get started. So, for the month of June, I read 9 books, 959 pages, and 67.05 hours. So, crazy amount of time. Average time to finish was 12 days. We'll talk about that later. But for my moods, it was mostly emotional, adventurous, and dark. And then we have about a chunk of 4 that are the same, with reflective, mysterious, lighthearted, and hopeful. And then we have another chunk that are about the same, and these are tense, sad, relaxing, inspiring, informative, and funny. So for my pacing, I had 89% be medium pace and 11% be fast pace. We're gonna look and see which fast paced book that is, but I don't exactly remember which one it is. Then we have page number. I did read a couple physical books. I was proud of myself. But we have a 33% were under 300 pages, and then 67% were my sweet spot of 300 to 499 pages. For audiobook length, read a few of those this month. I had 17% 16 plus, which, if you guys know, for me, that's usually not how I roll. And then I had about 83% between my usual 8 hours to 15 hours and 59 minutes. For my fiction and nonfiction, I'm still keeping up with reading a nonfiction book every month. I had 11% nonfiction and 89% fiction. And then for my genres, it was Pride Month. We love being queer. So for my genres, queer romances really stood out to me this month. Wasn't all I read, but I did have a lot of queer books and a lot of romance. And then fantasy also notched up there. And then we had a tie between young adult thriller, horror, speculative fiction, erotica, sports, self-help, or horror, and then a tie between speculative fiction, erotica, sports, self-help, science fiction, psychology, historical, and graphic novels. Then, as you can see, for my tags, I had 3 of my books from Libby and 1 new release that I was really excited to read. Then you can see for my format, we didn't get any Kindle books in this month. I'm going to try to maybe do that next month, but we'll talk about how book stuff's gonna go down later. I have my format 33% print, which was 959 pages, and then audio 67% with 67.22 hours. Language, everything in English, and then my ratings were a little like, it started out not good, but then it got way better. I have 3 5 stars this month, which we're gonna talk about. 1 4.5, and then 4 4 stars, and then 1 1.5, which we're gonna talk about. Because girls, we gotta talk about this book. But you can see for my month, started out kind of like going with the flow. I had a lot of reading done between the 4th and the 7th, and then from the 8th to the 6th to about like the 14th, really to like the 19th, I was kind of locked in. We'll talk about it when we look at my calendar, but a lot of things happened, and then definitely after the 19th, we going up, baby. We read so much this month. But for my calendar, as you can see, I was kind of sticking to my audiobooks for most of the month. And then I finished Soul to Keep. We'll talk about that later. And then I had this like break of I was only reading the Dreadfuls for a little bit. The reason that is because on June 16th, your girl defended her master's thesis. So that whole so like basically those first 2 weeks I was finishing up thesis edits. I also had a charity stream I was doing. I co-streamed for the Wholesome Direct. I was really busy that first week. And the second week, I had to make my entire PowerPoint. I did a practice talk with my advisor. I had to edit some things, and then I defended on the 16th, which, if you guys do not know what entails a master's thesis defense, I wrote about 62-page thesis on all the research I've done in the last 2 years of a project I made on my own. I then, after I wrote it all, I had to make a PowerPoint, present it to an audience, and I chose to present it in a not like a more simplified way, I would say, because I had a lot of friends who aren't science majors or haven't taken science in a while that wanted to be there. And then I also um did a defense where it was 30 minutes of my committee members, my advisor, and two more people from my department, just going around and asking me any and all questions related to my research. So that was fun. But I did it, so I was taking a break for a little bit, and then I was like, "Ooh, I want to finish this book, The Dreadfuls," because I'll be honest, my Libby hold was going up and I needed to finish it. But after that, I kind of started being a little bit more reliable with my reading. So I started a couple more books here and there, and then you can see on the 28th, which was the Sunday, I finished 3 books, which was insane. And technically, you see, how did you read 491 pages? Well, from the 27th to the 28th, I stayed up until 3 a.m. finishing one book. And then the next morning, I woke up and finished another book. And then after that, I was like, well, why don't I just read another book? Because I'm also was part of a readathon this month, the Tarot Readathon. If you guys do not hear about it, I will link the host or the lady who makes it down below. But I had to get a lot of books done in that last week. In that last 7 days, I finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books in 7 days. I was chugging, girlies. Oh my god, we gotta talk about the books. But as you can see, I have my ratings down here, but we're about to go into it. And the day I did the most was on the 30th, because obviously we had to finish up those books. So, this is the only not queer book I read in June, because I am in Fats' book club, and because we've been reading a lot of like dark stuff, Fats was like, ooh, we should read something fun. Let's read a monster romance. And I said, let's read A Soul to Keep. Now you may be looking and going, hey, Zoe, why is it a 1.5? And to that, I will say, I have mixed feelings on this book now. So I first read this book. Actually, let me see if you and read. Yeah, I first read this book in 2024. I read it as a part of another book club I was in. We were taking a break and wanted to read some silly fun stuff. So we did. And I loved it at first because I was like, oh my god, he loves her so much. This is so cool. But I was also working a full-time job while reading this. So I don't think I paid attention to it as much as I should have. I jumped back into this, and it was okay for the first couple chapters, but there will be spoilers in here, so if you don't want to hear spoilers, please skip ahead. Why does the FMC have a tendency to, like, summarize every single thing that happened as if we weren't there just reading it? It's crazy to me. Oh, excuse me. Also, like, I just didn't like it as much. Like, it very much gives straight woman yearning for genitalia that is not their own. Like, and that just didn't vibe with me, especially during Pride Month. I'm like, So I gave it a 1.5 star rating. And I said, holy hell, this is worse than I remember. This was like a touch-starved woman yearns for a peen. I like the purple motif, but why are we summarizing everything that just happened? And is this a second screen type of book? I feel like this is good material for, like, if you're watching, like, if you're reading the audiobook and you're doing some crafting and your mind needs to kind of be on the crafting, like if you're crocheting or diamond painting or something. I think this is like a second screen type of book, and maybe it's because it's the author's first book. I didn't really like the second one, I will say. The second one, there's a plus size FMC, and spoiler alert, she gets pregnant within like first half of the book, and I'm upset because it's like, oh, I have like a will to live now because I have children. I'm like, girlie, you had that before. You were banging before. But like, anywho, um, it felt very much like the summarizations were there because the author was like, oop, here's a summarization if you've missed the last few chapters, tee-hee. And I don't know. But for content warnings, we have graphic sexual content, violence and blood, moderate death, gore, and death of a parent, and then minor sexual assault, kidnapping, and pregnancy. The next book I read was so much better. Oh my god, this is The Dreadfuls by A. Ray Dunlap. I read A. Ray Dunlap's first book in January and immediately put this on my Libby. It came out in March, so new release, also got it on Libby. I read the first A. Ray Dunlap and I immediately put this on hold. It did come up in April, but I wasn't able to read it because I was really busy, so I ended up... excuse me. I ended up not reading it then. I put it on for another hold, and I got it at the end of May, and I was like, I want to read. So, for The Dreadfuls, this is set in London in 1888, and committed to the Whitechapel Hall Reform School for incurable delinquency is 15-year-old Dell Morton, who's a, quote, misfit. She likes reading like these crimes and what she calls penny dreadfuls, which I think is kind of a play on the title. Her parents died in like an accident of some sort from my remembrance, and she goes to live with her aunt and uncle. Her parents left her a bunch of money. Her aunt and uncle want the money, and they think she should be prim and proper. As for 1880s London, however, she's very much like, I want to be a detective, I want to solve crime, I want to be educated. And she keeps getting kicked out of schools because they keep, like, burning her books and everything. And, like, you learn that, like, she's not a bad kid. She just wants to advance in society and no one wants her because they want her money. So, it's set in Victorian London, which I really liked. It's, like, gothic mystery setting. I really appreciated it. It was very nice. But let's go ahead and see my review. I gave 4 stars. This was a great A. Ray Dunlap. I loved the mystery and the spooky aspect. However, the story was semi-predictable after the 60%. I didn't like how the ending was very, very rushed, and I did want more detail and a fleshed out ending rather than a quick 30-minute wrap-up. So that is one thing that made this not a 5-star, I will say, because about 60% of the way through the book, the premise we've been working off of shifts, and it changes to a whole nother premise that basically gives the ending away, which, like, isn't awful, but, like, it was very predictable how things were gonna happen after that 60%. And then the ending was very rushed. Like, the ending was done, and then we got 1 chapter of what happened after the ending. And I'm like, it all felt very rushed. Like, there was a giant time skip. There was, this is what happened. This is what's happening now. Here's your future launch off. Like, there's a good launch off for a book after this, which I kind of hope happens. If not, I will be very upset. But it's kind of like loosely based on Jack the Ripper type stuff, which is kind of cool. I did like it a lot. Just I wish the ending was a little bit more fleshed out, and I wish it wasn't so predictable after that 60%, but it's also kind of how these mystery stories work. Content warnings: we have graphic gore, violence, and murder, moderate racial slurs, racism, and anti-Semitism. There is a Jewish family who is persecuted by other Jewish people in the book, so be aware of that. Minor child death, sexual assault, suicide, so keep in mind with that. The next book I read was They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. So, this book, I have a little bit of a history with this book. In undergrad was in a book club. This was the book they were reading my last semester, but I was not able to be active my last semester because I was applying to grad schools and blah, 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 blah. So I didn't end up reading this book, but everyone's like, oh my god, it's such a good book. I kind of thought that it was sad because it's named They Both Die at the End. I'm like, oh, that spoils it for me. Like, I know that's, like, the point, but, like, what the hell? So, basically, this book follows Mateo and Rufus, And basically, there's a thing called death cast where these people get called and told, hey, you're going to die today at some point. We don't know when, but you're going to die today. We don't know how. And basically, they're complete strangers. Mateo's had a really hard life. His dad's at the hospital. His mom is out of the picture. Rufus kind of like just joins up with his friends and hangs out with them. But this turned out to be a very nice queer love story. Dreadfuls was also queer as well. Basically, like, there was some like sexuality talk in there and stuff like that. But they both die at the end. Mateo is kind of like learning his sexuality a little bit, like kind of like doesn't know what it is, but is like is open to learn. Meanwhile, Rufus is like, hey bitches, I'm bi/pan, let's go. I liked the story in this, even though you have like they're both gonna die. You know they're both gonna die. All the chapters are like, they're gonna die. But you fall in love with them in a way you're not expecting. And you hope at the end that neither one of them are gonna die. And it really almost broke my heart, or almost, it did break my heart. At the end, I just sat there and was like, oh, this is how it ends. This is so sad. Why? This is going to be a tearjerker for most people. I did rate it a 4-star. I said this was so impactful. I flew through this book and I need to read it again to experience it in full. And I fell in love with Mateo and Rufus's story, a romantically devastating way to end Pride Month. Because it is a queer story, but also like why we gotta be queer and sad, you know? Content warnings: graphic death, grief, and death of a parent, moderate gun violence, regular violence, car accident, and then minor panic attack or disorders, suicidal thoughts, and suicide. But the next book I read was Model Home by Rivers Solomon. Now, this was my first Rivers Solomon. I also didn't expect this to be queer, but it was, and I was very excited about that. This was also for Fats Book Club. This was our book for June. I did miss the book club. I still need to go back and watch it. I was at Pride. I forgot. It's okay. But I read this, and this is basically like a new haunted house novel. There are these 3 Maxwell siblings, and they kept their distances from Dallas, where they grew up. When their family moved there, there was like this odd presence in the house that kept like having things happen, do this, do that, blah 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 blah. And it was like really scary for them, to the point that they had to send like a child away to boarding school to save them. Like, there were so many things happening. They tried to record and the tapes kept getting messed up. Like, horrid. But this basically follows that the parents have all of a sudden died in this house. They first went missing, then you find out they're dead, and you don't know what killed them or who killed them. So you're going to see, did this house kill them? And it follows these 3 siblings. I liked it because one of the siblings, from a very young age, knew they were gender fluid, and their parents accepted that and allowed them to be gender fluid, which I was very appreciative of. And then we also have 2 sisters in there as well. Excuse me. But I was very excited about this book. I gave it a 4.5-star review. There's a lot of trauma in this, so please check the triggers. It's my first River Solomon. I enjoyed it very much. I loved the queer rep, and the horror was spot on. Spoilers, but fuck Lori. This is an eerie vibe through the whole book and made nothing predictable. I really like an unpredictable horror novel that still makes sense. This is the first horror book I didn't predict the end for in a while. I was very pleased with this, reasons why I got a 4.5. But there were graphic depictions of child abuse, pedophilia, racism, moderate animal death, rape, sexual assault, and then minor transphobia, vomit, and suicide attempt. So please be careful with yourselves. Things are talked about. Check the triggers. Hold yourself. I shouldn't have read this as fast as I did, but I was really liking it. Check in with your mental health, but I really like this book a lot. I was very sad that I missed the book club meeting for it, but I am so excited to read this again and like go back through it and look at all the hints and stuff. I love doing that with books like that. Now the next one. There's a little bit of story to this one. This is Wicked Beauty, which is part of the Dark Olympus series by Katie Robert. I first read the first one, which is Hades and Persephone. Ugh, excuse me. Neon Gods, because I saw the cover in a Walmart and was like, ooh, purple and dark blue with a chair with this lighting. It's beautiful. I didn't read it for a while, and then my roommate opened it up and it was like, why is this woman calling this man daddy? And I was like, pause. I need to read this. I didn't know there was sex in this. So I read the book, flew through it, got the second one, flew through it. The third one then came out, and this is a poly representation, like a modern retelling of Helen of Troy, Achilles, and Patroclus, or Patroclus. I think it's Patroclus. Being bisexual, the bisexuals in the crowd know, I have been unicorn hunted so many times that I have avoided poly books because I don't want to be reminded of it. I don't want to think about it. Da, 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 da. But that hasn't happened to me in like 3 years because I'm in a relationship and people know I'm in a relationship. So I wanted to open this back up and I'm like, you know what? It's Pride Month. I want to read diverse queer stories. I want to read more gay romance. Fuck it, let's go. And oh my god, I'm so excited that I read this. Oh, so basically, how this universe is set up is instead of Olympus being like gods and whatever, it's like a council of power in a city that is like separated from all of the other land, basically, and the gods of Olympus rule this city. Like gods, they're like political officials, rule this city, and sometimes you get like sometimes like the positions are passed on due to family status, sometimes they're passed on due to someone being appointed, da 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 da. Well, in this one, Ares has died in the last book, and Ares is the only position that anyone can be up for as long as they complete this like competition of sorts that's like very emotionally and physically taxing. Helen of Troy doesn't want to be like the person who's like the sister of Zeus, because like what the hell. She wants to fight for herself, and as soon as she found out that she could do this, she has been training her whole life in gymnastics, weightlifting, cardio, boxing, blah 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 blah. Ares dies, and she learns that her brother has made her the prize and will be the wife for whoever wins. She doesn't like that idea at all, and she's like, well, if I go in for myself, I win my own hand, and no one's gonna marry me. So she enters this competition, and so do Achilles and Patroclus. And Achilles and Patroclus are already, like, dating, basically. They have, like, an open relationship. And Helen and Patroclus used to be friends when they were younger. Achilles doesn't really know her, but they get to fighting, and some steamy tensions arise. Someone breaks into Helen's room, so then she stays with Achilles and Patroclus, and da-da-da-da. And it gets really steamy. One thing I liked, well, there's one thing I didn't like and one thing I did like in this book. I think the balance of the trials and then the steamy scenes, mwah, chef's kiss, loved it. One thing I did not like, and maybe this is just because I didn't read a lot of smutty fiction, I'm a very, like, not clean person, but, like, hygienic person. And I did not like some of the scenes because I was like, oh, I know you're all tested, but, like, hold. That's, like, not safe. Oh my god, what's going on? Like, it was a lot of that. I did like the steamy poly scenes. I was surprised. I ate this book up. And I had read the first book, the second book, and then the fourth book, because I had skipped this one. And then when the fifth book came out, it was another poly. I was like, well, I can't go on with the series without reading 2 of the books. As soon as I finished this, I was like, how can I get the next 2 books on my hands? I need to read more of this. So, I gave this a 4 star. Because, the cover, beautiful. The story, beautiful. It kind of ends on a cliffhanger, which, like, I think I talked about in my review. Yeah. It took me 4 years. I finally read the book, because I read the 4th one, like, literally 4 years ago. I flew through it. Helen, Achilles, and Patroclus are all phenomenal. It did take about 25 to 30% of the book for me not to see Achilles. Achilles is just an asshole. Achilles very much has this, like, not toxic mindset, but very much like, I'm the man, and I provide, and I'm in control, and, like, gives top energy, but also, like, is kind of a sadist a little bit in his sexual roleplay, which, like, sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's not, but, like, after you get to, like, through 30% of it, he's not really an asshole anymore. But I love the dynamic between the three of them. The sex was hotter than expected, and now I need to finish the series. I will say the book ended, like, the last trial ends, you figure out who wins the competition, and then there's just, like, a chapter of waiting, because people got injured, and you're just waiting, and waiting, and waiting. And then the last chapter is like, oh, everything's fine, we're good, this is how we're gonna do things, bam. And then, like, you just end. And I was very upset, because I wanted more details. I do remember the three of them being described in the 4th book, but, like, once you get a description of, like one, it's kind of like Bridgerton. Once your book is done, you really don't feature in the other books. Like, there might be a couple sayings about you, but that's it. But anyhow, content warnings. We have graphic emotional abuse, sexual content and violence, moderate toxic relationship, blood, injury and injury detail, and then minor miscarriage, death of a parent, and murder. It's the murder. But the next book I read was Can't Spell Treason Without T, the first book in the Tomes and Tea novel by Rebecca Thorne. Ugh. Okay. History on this. I have had this book on my shelf for literally at least 2 years. I am an avid supporter of Travis Baldree and Legends and Lattes. I have not read the 3rd book because I'm waiting on the paperback to come out, and maybe you're all going to be like, Zoe, what the hell? Why are you waiting for the paperback to come out? If I buy the 1st book in a paperback and I have majority of the series in a paperback, then I'm going to buy the paperbacks, and I will wait my turn. But oh my god, this is so good. This is about Rhaena and Kianth. Rhaena is a part of the Queen's private guard, and Kianth is like the Arkandor, which is like the high mage, basically, of the realm. And Kianth doesn't show up for a ball. The Queen gets angry. Someone tries to assassinate the Queen. Rhaena fights them off and, like, almost dies from blood loss, and the Queen's kind of an asshole and is like, I don't care, you need to be back tomorrow because you need to stop. But Kianth and Rhaena have been dating for, like, the last 2 years long distance, and then all of a sudden, Kianth had asked Rhaena several times, like, let's leave, let's go open a bookshop with a tea shop, let's go do it. And Rhaena's like, no, I have to be part of the guard. And then after this time where Rhaena almost, like, dies serving the Queen for, like, 100th time and the Queen doesn't care, Rhaena's like, you know what? Fuck the Queen. I'm leaving. So Kianth and Rhaena go to this little quaint little town. I forget the name of the town. Does it mention the town here? No, it doesn't. Oh, Tawny. Yes, Tawny. Basically, it's nestled in between, like, icy dragon country and, like, lush things. It's in between these two nations. Well, they go and they buy a place in town. They open up a bookshop and they start their lives. And guys, this is everything about Legends and Lattes that I loved plus more. Oh my god. So my thing with Legends and Lattes, I did like the 2nd book, The Bookshops and Bone Dust. I did. It was the prequel. But I wanted more cozy things. This gave me all the cozy. And we'll see how much I liked the book in a little bit later when I talk about it. But I gave this a 5.0. I had this sitting on my shelf for a while, and I'm so upset I waited this long to read it. It was so cute and cozy. I loved Legends and Lattes, and I'm very excited to dive into the next book. If you've not read this book and you love queer retellings, please, please, please read this. Oh my god, I'm so excited. I had the physical. I did do an immersive read with it because I had the audiobook as well. But, please read this. For content warnings, we have moderate cursing, violence, vomit, injury, and injury detail. And then for minor, we have death of a parent and murder. Now, I then read Cheer Up, Love and Pom Poms by Crystal Fraser. Now, this is a book that I got on literally on the 27th of the month and then finished on the 28th. This is a short little graphic novel about these two teens. Annie, oh my god, Annie and what's the other one's name? Oh my god. Annie and who? B. Oh my god, BB. Annie and BB. Annie's on the left, BB is on no, BB's on the right, Annie's on the left. Good lord. But yes. So Annie is like forced to join the cheer squad to make friends and round out her college applications, and BB's already been on the team, and it follows them throughout their last year of high school and like being in a cheer squad, having fun with their friends, dealing with like societal pressures of being queer and all that. It's just so good. It was a really short book. It was only 128 pages. And it was a graphic novel, so it wasn't that long. I rated it a 4.0. I said, cute high school queer romance. I wish I could have read something like this when I was younger. Cute and fast read. Love the diverse representations. There are many different backgrounds present. But there's graphic, fat phobia, transphobia, sexual harassment, moderate body shaming and bullying, and minor emotional abuse and violence. So check the triggers, keep yourself good. But this was a really I sat and read it in like one sitting. It was so good. I literally, if I look at my story graph, it's literally you started it and then you finished it. Like there's no in between. The next book I finally finished was Unmasking for Life, The Autistic Person's Guide to Connecting, Loving, and Living Authentically by Devin Price, PhD. I read Unmasking Autism last year, and that really opened up a lot of things for me, being a neurodivergent person of maybe I'm autistic, maybe I'm not. I'm not diagnosed, but well, with autism at least, but I am diagnosed neurodivergent. And this was basically how to best unmask yourself in life and not train yourself, but like allow yourself to like live up to other people's expectations and like be able to like be there for yourself when other people may not. I've recommended this book to a lot of people. Devin also has their books free on their website, on their Substack, if you would like to go and read them. But I love this a lot. It makes me think a lot. I kind of listen to this in like snippets of like podcast form for each chapter, because at least how it was divided up for the audiobook, it was like an hour per chapter, so it was easy to do that. But I really liked it. I gave this a 5.0. Another amazing book by Devin Price, PhD, that I'm so lucky to read. Devin always challenges me at times when I needed it and getting wrapped up in this job pursuit I'm currently in, being independent and worrying about my move. But Devin tells many stories about others in the autistic community and how they have fulfilling lives, and I will reread once I move in with my partner. I am moving. We'll talk about that at the end of the video. However, I'm very excited to read this again once I am living on my own again and I'm able to unmask a little bit better, but we'll talk about that in a little bit later. Content warnings: graphic ableism, suicidal thoughts, and grief. Moderate death, drug use, and sexual content. And then minor suicide, transphobia, and death of a parent. So watch the triggers, keep up with yourself. And then the last book I read, which makes it our third 5-star of the month, is Cosmic Love: The Multiverse Hair Salon by Annie Marie. I looked at this, and this reminded me of One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. And I went, let me read this shit, because I loved this book. This, basically, there's a misdirected text at the beginning and a flirty exchange, and this woman named Meryl never shows. Tressa Faye works at a hair salon, brushes it off, and is like, I'm not gonna worry about it too much. It's fine. But but that's kind of weird. And then she finds out Meryl's sister and friends show up and they demand to know what's going on because Meryl couldn't have texted her because she's been missing for a month. And you go through this like multiverse cosmic wheel of like how friends influence your life, how like circumstances can influence your life, and how like just everyone being there and loving each other will influence your life. And I really enjoyed it. It's a queer story that I absolutely loved, and I can't wait to read it again. Honestly, I did rush through it a little bit to get it finished, so I would like to read it again. But 5 stars, amazing. I love the build up. At the end, we get so many sexy scenes. But this was on my list after reading One Last Stop. It was so much heart-wrenching, so much more heart-wrenching than I was on the edge of my seat until the last chapter. Please read this. I'm now looking out for this author. Annie Marie, or Annie Mare, I should say. You are my, like, auto-buy read. This was that good. So, graphic, sexual content, grief and death of a parent, moderate cancer, infidelity and abandonment, and minor animal death, bullying, and regular death. With that being said, we now need to talk about what I'm going to be reading next month. So, I did mention that I went to Pride. I went to Pride and I purchased some books. I purchased the second book of the Tomes and Tea series, and I'm going to start this basically immediately this month. I also bought Genderqueer. I read this back in January. I absolutely love this. And then I also bought my Cheer Up book. I went to Pride in my town, and there is a little bookshop that is opening called the Littlest Gay Bookshop. I will link their website down below. But I went there to support someone I had met through social media, and it was so good and so much fun. They also were selling little earrings. I'll hold these up, and these are like the Genderqueer book in earring form. But it's so cute, so nice. I loved meeting Hannah so much, and I'm definitely going to start reading A Pirate's Life for Tea very soon. For my Libby holds, I do have a lot on here. I have started Apparently Sir Cameron Needs to Die by the Greer Stuthers. I've been wanting to read that for a while. Also, Howl's Moving Castle came up, which I've also had on my list because a lot of my friends have read it and they've said it's amazing. So I'm going to read that. And then I also have Safekeep by Yael van der Wooden, I think is how you say that author's name. But I have those on my list right now for holds. Also, The Night and the Moth is going to come in very soon. That's important. And so is potentially Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. It might be the month of me reading a bunch. Now, also one thing that I would like to note is I know Heartstopper is coming out soon. Heartstopper Volume 5, I think, is coming out soon. Let me check that. 5 already came out. It's 6 that's coming out. Heartstopper 7, not 7. 6. Heartstopper 6. Release date. Come on, give me a release date. Please, release date. Okay, it literally comes out today as of filming this in Europe, and then the 7th in the US and Canada. So, today's July 2nd as I'm filming this. So, we need to be able to get this good. So, I want to read Heartstopper. It's not available in my library. I want to read it so bad, but we'll see if it comes in. I still have to read the 5th one, but my library also doesn't have the 5th one. But there are also a couple physical books. I want to read A Pirate's Life for Tea. With the physical books I read in June, I now read 4 physical books this year. My goal is to read 10 throughout the year, because I do have a couple physicals that I really need to read. But, I have a list of physicals over here that I need to get through. Some of them I do have the audiobook for as well, so they will be an immersive read. Other ones I will not. I also have my extensive list of queer books that I wanted to read that I have not been able to. Where is it? Where's my list? Okay, I read that. I read that. Okay. So I still have The Picture of Dorian Gray, Get Over It, April Evans, which I was going to read in June. I just didn't have time. Gwen and Art are not in love. You weren't meant to be human. Oh my god, I need to read that Andrew Joseph White book so bad. Ugh, one of my favorite authors. The Color Purple, I also have Prior of the Orange Tree, I have Dark and Drowning Tide, Sword in the Stars, Honey Witch, Payback's a Witch. That's not even including all the books I have. But I will say, July is Summerween. July and August, technically. Technically, we're going through Summerween. So I'm gonna try to read some of my horror books as well. For example, You Weren't Meant to Be Human. I also have Final Girl Standing, I think, by Grady Hendrix or something like that. I have a couple horrors I need to read, but I think I'm gonna call it there. One little thing though, I am moving at the end of July. Um, I am ending my grad school career, so I am currently looking for jobs. I don't know where I will be going. However, I will be moving at the end of the month. So next month's book, um, video may be a little bit later because I'll have to move and get my PC set up. But we should be able to still do books, videos, and everything like that. I'll also should still be streaming, but I will let you guys know about that. Also, please comment down below if you would like a 6-month wrap up. I was debating making one just to be like, hey, this is my stats for my first 6 months. Let's see what happened. Let's see how many like 5 stars I have, any 4 stars, etc. But you guys are awesome. I love you oh so much. And I will see you either in my next booktube video, or if you're following me over on Twitch. I stream every Tuesday and Saturday at 5 p.m. EST, twitch.tv/spookyzoe, double Y on spooky, double Y on Zoe. But I'll have all my links below. I've also made a Ko-Fi if you would like to use that. But never expected. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys either on Twitch or in my next booktube video. Bye!